Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stitch Sessions. It's a new month and I am going to be taking you guys through a brand new pillow project. If you guys are new here, my name is Karen and I love all things to do with crafting with crochet, and I like to lead my crochet friends through a crochet series every year. And this year's theme is Pillow Talk, where every month I take on a brand new crochet pillow project. And so for the month of March, we are going to be working on this beauty. This is the Seedling Pillow, and it's called the Seedling Pillow because we use the seedling stitch, which is also known as the mini basket weave stitch. Now I've done this in 2 colors, so it just creates a little bit more of an extra interesting texture. The seedling stitch is also already quite interesting, but just adding a bit of contrast to the color I thought would give it a really, really cool look. Now, what's extra cool about this pillow is that it's just created with 1 square panel. And the reason for that is because on the other side is just regular fabric. And I did a little cheat by getting a bed pillowcase from the thrift store. So this was already a regular pillowcase, and then I just cut 1 section of it at the top to create this envelope closure. So you don't even need a zipper, you don't need buttons, it's just a simple little flap. You tuck it in and your pillow is done. So I'm always looking for just slightly different ways to create each different pillow, in hopes that perhaps you'll get some different ideas and different ways that you can do your pillow. So this one is crochet on one side, and then it's got a little bit of embroidery on the other side. Now, this is just a happy accident. This is how I came across this pillowcase. It had this beautiful little flowered embroidery, and it had a little bit of the blue there. So I just thought it would make for a beautiful accent to our throw pillow here. So this would look beautiful, you know, in the bedroom or in the living room or in a front entrance, like I have it on this beautiful velvet chair here. And I'm very happy with how it came out. You will have to do a little bit of hand sewing because we do take the panel and we have to sew it to the edge of the bed pillow, which I do take you through. Now, if you're handy with the sewing machine, by all means, you know, you can sew it on. But I know a lot of crocheters aren't necessarily sewers. So you can absolutely hand sew this. It's the exact same method you would use to hand sew a zipper. Remember I did that tutorial a couple weeks back, which is going to come in handy for a lot of these pillow tutorials coming up, especially if you like the idea of being able to remove the cover and wash it. As always, anytime you have something with acrylic yarn, just wash it in gentle. I like to lay mine flat to dry, even though sometimes some of the instructions say you can tumble dry low, but I always just like to lay mine flat to dry. What I want to do next is I'm going to show you all of the materials you're going to need to gather together in order to make your seedling pillows. So let's get stitching. All right, so for this project, I am using strictly scrap yarn, I'll call it. Now, this is all yarn that actually I frogged from another project. Now, we all have projects that we start and then, well, at least I do. Sometimes I get gung-ho, I start a project, I actually get, you know, halfway or 3/4 of the way through because I'm working out a concept, and then I set it down because I've gotten something else that I started to work on or needed to get finished. And sometimes it gets left for a year and a half. Finally, I said to myself, I'm not actually going to finish this project. I don't even get excited about this design anymore. So I like the idea of reusing what I have. So I literally just frogged the whole project. So that is the yarn I'm going to be using. And in case you're wondering, this is the Bernat Softy Baby yarn. And happily, this worked out perfect for this pillow. So you would definitely need 2 skeins of each of these colors if you're doing contrasting colors to make it work. If you're using a solid color, then I would get at least 4 skeins of these for 1 panel. Now for this project, I'm only crocheting one side of the pillow, and the other side is just going to be a regular fabric. If you were doing 2 panels, like to create your whole pillow that way, I would get at least 6 to 8 skeins in total, or 4 of the blue and 4 of the white, just to be on the safe side, because the stitch is so tightly woven. So that is what I'm using for this yarn. I'll actually put a graphic up on the screen of what that label looks like and what the content of yarn is in each skein, okay? The hook I'm going to be using for this project is going to be a 4.5 millimeter hook, which is also known as a G or a size 7. Hopefully you can see that there, okay? And as always, make sure that you have a yarn needle to sew in any of your ends at the end, and a handy pair of scissors to snip off your yarn, because you'll be snipping them off a lot as we change colors. You are also going to need a square piece of fabric. Now, I got my fabric at the thrift store. And so my little trick is I go to the bedding section where there's lots of flat bed sheets or pillowcases or tablecloths or napkins. And a lot of times when I'm doing a sewing project or I need a piece of fabric for a crochet project, that is where I go. And so I actually lucked out and found this beautiful linen bed pillowcase. So it's got this little bit of embroidery here on one side. And so it's a bit long, but it worked out perfectly. But when I measured across, it is exactly 19 inches across, which is fantastic. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the pillow tube intact. Because of how we're going to create the closure for this, this is actually just going to make my life a lot easier. So I am technically going to place the pillow insert inside this kind of shaping of this pillow. The difference is I am actually going to sew this end shut, because I want my embroidery part to be the focus on the fabric side of the pillow. And I'm going to open up this end here and keep one side, because that's how we're going to create the closure for this pillow. It's going to be a little bit of an envelope style closure without the buttons. And you'll see how I'm going to do it once we get to that part. So this is my piece of fabric. It is cotton. 100% cotton, which will make it fantastic to be able to throw this in the wash. Just make sure anytime you put any crochet items in the wash, in general, I just place them always in gentle cycle, okay? So that is my piece of material. You are also going to need some thread and a thread needle to sew your fabric to your crocheted panel, unless you know how to machine sew, which then you can just simply sew your panel on the machine. And of course, anytime we're making a pillow, you're going to need a pillow insert. This is a 20 by 20 inch square pillow. I got it on Amazon. I'll leave a link for it in the description box down below. I'm very particular when I buy pillow inserts, because some of them are very flat and the filling tends to, I call it, die right away. This particular company, I also used this company to buy the round pillow insert for the Sweet Pea pillow that I did. And I find that once the vacuum seal comes out of it, like, it really maintains, it puffs up really nicely and it maintains its firmness. Look at that. So, you know, depending on how you're going to use your pillow, I do like mine to have a wee bit of firmness to it. So that is the pillow I'm going to be using for this project. So let's get started stitching up our pillow. Okay, so I'm going to begin with my blue color here. And what you want to do is you want to begin by placing a slip knot on your hook. Now I'm going to start off by chaining up 70 chains, and that is because of the width of my pillow, which is going to be 18 inches across. If you're going to make it for a larger pillow, just make sure that you have an even number of chains to start. So I'm going to start off with my chains here. Okay, so I have my 70 chains here, and I just want to make sure that it's not twisted and that they weren't chained too tightly. So right now it should be a little bit stretchy. In the first row, you're going to notice there is going to be a bit of a shrink factor, and that's why it's important that you don't chain this first chain too tightly. If you're a tight crocheter, remember, always go up a hook size in order to do your initial chain. So what we're going to do for row number 1 is we're going to find the second chain from the hook. Remember that we never count the loop that's on the hook here. So we're going to find 1 and 2, and into that second chain, we are going to place a single crochet. Again, we don't want to crochet tightly. We want to keep it nice and relaxed. And so that's what we're going to do into every single chain. We're just going to single crochet. Okay, so you have something that's looking like that. Okay, so go ahead and do that all the way down the end of your chain. Okay, once you've completed row number 1, you've got something that looks like this, and you will feel like your length has shrunk a little bit, which is normal. So I just like to kind of smooth it out, give it a little stretch, and then continue on. Okay, so we're going to go on to row number 2. And so we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to turn our work. And now we're going to be using the double crochet stitch, which is the main stitch we're going to be using for the rest of this project. We're just going to be using a little technique of the double crochet after this. So for row number 2, it's still pretty straightforward. We are just going to go into the next stitch. Now remember, this chain 3 will count as a double crochet, so we are not going to go into this very first stitch there. That is the base of this chain. So we are going to go into the next stitch. You're going to yarn over and insert a double crochet stitch. So that means you pull through 2 and pull through 2. And that is what you're going to do into each and every single stitch all the way to the end of your row. So still nice and easy, pretty straightforward. Okay, just like that. And don't worry that this feels like it's a bit of a gap. It will all even out with subsequent rows. So go ahead and do a double crochet, 1 into each stitch all the way to the end. And by the way, at the end of row number 1, you will now have 69 stitches. And this should be your consistent stitch count. If you do yours longer, it should be an odd number of stitches now. So that's all you want to keep in mind. If you're following along exactly with me, you should always have 69 stitches. If you're doing it longer or shorter, then you should just make sure you always have an odd number of stitches. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the end of row number 2, and don't forget that turning chain there. It's my last stitch. I always try and get both loops here if I can. There we go. Now, whoops. Now this is my last stitch of row number 2, and I've got my double crochet there, but I'm not going to finish it because I am now going to change colors. So you've got row number 1 is all single crochets, row number 2 is all double crochets. I consider this still the 2 establishing rows of the design, not of the seedling stitch, which is what we're going to now begin in row number 3. So before I resolve the double crochet, I'm actually going to bring in my contrasting color, which is going to be my white yarn. And I like to resolve the last stitch with the color of the new stitch. And I find it just makes it a little bit more seamless on the edges. Some people would resolve and then snip your yarn, knot it off, and start the new one with a slip knot. I just personally don't like having that many knots at the end, especially in a project where you're switching yarn a lot. So this is what I always like to do. Just at the tail end of that last stitch, I'm actually going to bring this new color through to finish that stitch. Okay, and I just pull that tight. Now the double crochet is complete and the new yarn has come through. Then what I'll do is I'll just take the old yarn and the tail, and I'll flip it over, and then I'll chain one like that, so it traps these two pieces together. Then I'll proceed to chain two more. So we always still start with a chain three. So the first chain was to trap it in, and the other two chains is to give me the height of a double crochet. Now at this point, because we are not carrying our yarn for this project, I'll just place that down, and I'm going to snip off the blue yarn. Okay, and that is what I'm going to do at the edge or at the end of every row, because I'm going to be changing colors at the end of every row. So now I'm going to turn my work. Now, normally what I would do is I would actually try my best to work over these tails, but because we're going to be using forward and back post double crochet stitches, it's just going to create a lot of bulk here. So I'm going to leave all of my tails. I know what you're thinking, that's too much sewing, but I'm going to leave all of my tails to the end. And that way I'm going to get a much cleaner kind of first few stitches here. Also, what some people might like to do, and I do like to do, is I'll take these two tails now, and I'll just give them a little knot so that they're nice and secure, okay? And so the knot, having one knot on the end here is better for me than having two knots together. So it's just a little smoother. I want to get it nice and snug, not too tight, and then I'll do a second one there. Just like that, okay? And so this is row number 3, and this is where we're really going to create the establishment of the seedling stitch. So remember, the chain 3 counts as a double crochet stitch, so we're going to work into the next stitch, but we're going to work around the post, and this is what we're going to do now for the rest of the project. So you're going to yarn over, and instead of going into the stitch, we are going to go in behind the stitch and around the post, in behind the post and poking forward. This brings that post forward. And so that's why we call this a front post double crochet. So then we yarn over, we pull it through, and we resolve like a regular double crochet stitch. We pull through 2, and we pull through 2. And by the way, I have tutorials on how to crochet front post double crochets and back post double crochets. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on the stitches themselves, I'll leave a link for those in the description box down below. But I am going through them very slowly with you here in this project because that's what it consists of. Okay, so we've created a front post double crochet stitch. Now the next stitch is going to be a back post. So as the name suggests, we're going to go in through the back. You do want to yarn over first, and now you're going to sneak in through the back, and you want to now push the post to the back. So then you come back out the other side. You pick up the loop as usual. This can be a little bit funky, and then bring the loop through. Be careful not to be too tight because sometimes people will pull the loops of the post. And then just keep it a little bit relaxed there. Okay, 3 loops on your hook, and then you resolve like a regular double crochet stitch. Okay, so we have our chain 3 at the beginning, so it's going to kind of nestle in there. We've got a front post and we've got a back post. So you can see the front post pushes the post to the front, the back post pulls it to the back. This is essentially what you're going to do all the way down your row. This is what creates the seedling stitch. Well, this is the beginning of the seedling stitch. So then we alternate. So now we're going to do a front post double crochet. So we have double crochet resolution. Next up is a back post. So you go in through the back and whoops, see, can be a little tricky. So through the front, out through the back, and just gently bring it up through. Just like that. And then we have front post. So you're going to do front post, back post, front post, back post. And you're going to go in this alternating fashion all the way down your row. The end of row number 3, you should still have an odd number of stitches. In my case, 69 stitches. So there you go. So you can see the front post and then the back post. So do that all the way down to the end of row number 3. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end of row number 3, and now you can really see how the contrasting colors are coming through so pretty. So what I'm going to do now is I've got this chain 3, so remember that that does count as a stitch. So my last stitch here is a front post double crochet, which it should always be at the end here at the second last stitch. Now what you want to do is find the top of that chain 3, and we are just going to double crochet, do a regular double crochet into it. So the first stitch and the last stitch are always a regular stitch. But as usual, I'm going to begin the double crochet, but remember I'm going to change color, so I'm not going to resolve it. I'm going to pick up my blue color again, and I'm going to bring it back in to pull through in order to finish that double crochet stitch. It's always going to be a little tricky here. Pull that through, and now I just pull the white a little bit tight. I flip over the white and the tail to the other side, and then I chain 3. So that first chain will always secure that in. 1, 2, 3, and then I snip off my white. And I like to do it right away so that I don't get tangled up, and make sure you always snip the right yarn, because sometimes if you're not paying attention, you could be snipping off the yarn you just placed. So now we're going on to row number 4, which is truly the repeat of this pillow design. So when you turn over, you are now going to see your front and your back post stitches. So what you're going to do is you are always going to work the opposite of what you see. So chain 3 will always count as a double crochet. We always skip that first stitch. Into the next stitch, you will always do a front post, and that's because that first stitch should always be showing you as a back post stitch. So see how it's in the back? So you're always going to do the opposite of what you see. So if I see a back post, I'm going to insert my hook and do a front post stitch. So front post double crochet. Now my next stitch is a front post, so I'm going to do a back post. And that's pretty much it. So now that you've done your establishing rows, it's easy to see what happens next. You don't have to count, which is great. You just go by what you see. So the next one is a back post. I'm going to go in there and make it a front post. And this is what creates the seedling stitch, or also known as the mini basket weave, is this alternating texture of front and back post stitches. It's so pretty. It creates a nice dense fabric, which is perfect for something like a pillow. Okay. So the next one I see here is a front post, so I'm going to make that a back post. And once you get the hang of doing this, now you're just set off, and you're going to do rows and rows and rows of this. So you're starting to see some interesting texture happen. It's still hard to kind of get the full scale of what it's going to look like. I'm actually going to pull out my panel that I've almost got done. See, the more rows you have, you can really see how that mini basket weave comes into play. It comes out so, so pretty. So if you're going to create 2 panels, then you're going to create 2 of these full length panels. So what you're going to do, because we want it a nice even square, this is row number 4. You are going to repeat row number 4 until you reach row number 35. Okay, so remember, row 1 and 2 do count. So the single crochet and just the double crochet, that's row 1 and 2. This is row 4. So you're going to repeat row number 4 until you get 35 rows in total. That should give you a fairly squared off shape. Now, a lot of times as we crochet, sometimes we inadvertently start to tighten our gauge, especially when we're working quite a bit. So just as you go along, just gauge how things are looking. You might want to just give it a little stretch to make sure we're not inadvertently tightening. Once you get to your 35th row, just have a look at it. If it's still looking a bit more rectangular, then put on a few more rows. It's not the end of the world. Our aim here is to give it a nice squared off shape. So for me, I have 18 inches across. So my aim is to get 18 inches in height, which is going to give me a nice squared off shape. Okay, so this is where I leave you. Continue repeating Remember, every time you get to the end of your row, generally you're going to be doing a front post. See how that's a back post? You're going to be doing a front post, double crochet stitch, and then in the very last stitch, that's the top of that chain 3, you're going to insert a regular double crochet stitch, okay? And that is the repeat for your panel. So go ahead and do your panel. I'm going to meet you back here once I've finished my panel. Okay, so I have completed my square, and as I suspected, because of how dense this stitch is, I actually ended up doing more than the 35 rows. I ended up doing a total of 53 rows, and I ended with the white row. And the reason being is because now I'm going to do a final border. So now you can really see the effect of that seedling stitch. Isn't that pretty? And so you'll have a lot of ends here at the end. So what I did, I started to weave in a bunch of them, but they're just so many because it's a lighter weight yarn. What I did is I just really double and triple knotted them at the end and then snipped them shorter because we are going to crochet over the ends here. So now what we want to do is start our border, and then our panel is going to be complete, and then we can start attaching our pillow together. So let's get started here. Okay, so I'm going to begin by placing a slip knot on my hook. And then I'm going to take my panel, and I want to start along the edge. So because we already started with a single crochet row and a double crochet row at the beginning, so I want to just show some continuity with this blue color here. So what you want to do is you want to find the very first stitch there, right there. And that is where you're going to insert your hook. Okay, so that means we're going to start by working along the side here. And I'm going to just slip stitch just like that. So the idea is we're going to work along the side. We're going to come around the corner, work along the top, down the other side, and we're going to end there. So we already did this blue section here, so we're not going to do that side. Okay, so we are going to continue with the idea of alternating front post stitches, but we're going to alternate between front post and regular double crochet stitches. So we're not going to do back post stitches, and you'll see why in a moment. So we're working along the sides of double crochet stitches, essentially. Some of them are double crochets, some of them are chain 3s. So what we're going to do to begin is we are going to chain 3 to begin. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And that will count as a double crochet stitch. So what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, and we're going to insert right back to where we just came out of, but we're going to kind of come and loop around and poke back through the front. So we're going around this little tiny post of the single crochet stitch of that row. And you just pull up a loop, might be a little bit tight. Okay. And then you resolve like a regular double crochet stitch. Okay. So that is our first, probably the most trickiest of the front posts. Now we're going to have this space here because that's the chain 3. So what we're going to do is we are going to just do a regular double crochet stitch. Now if I can, I actually want to work into one of these chains, but it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So it's okay to go into the space and place a regular double crochet. And then we're going to do a front post double crochet. So now they should start kind of showing themselves. So you can see the post of the side is generally where the two colors join. So just like that. So I'm going to resolve like a regular front post double crochet stitch. Okay. Now I've got this space here. I'm just going to go into the space, or if you can, work into the chain, and it's a regular double crochet. So you're still getting a little bit of a ridge effect, just like the regular seedling stitch. And now the next one would be a front post. So you just kind of want to find where your spaces are, and the post will show itself. So you just push that through. So because we're working through the side, the post, I like to call it, is a little bit thicker than what you have been working with in the regular rows. And I like how that just comes right around the corner, keeps it nice and uniform. Every few stitches, I like to just kind of make sure that it's sitting nice and flush and it's not buckling or rippling, okay? And then of course we have a space, so we just do a regular double crochet stitch. And that is the repeat here. So the next would be a front post. In a way, it's a little bit easier because they're a bit more spread out. And then we work a regular double crochet stitch. A front post. And a regular double crochet stitch. There we go. See how the blue is really just creating a nice anchor there for it. Love that. Okay, this is the repeat for your border. You're going to go all the way along the side. I am going to meet up with you just at this corner here. I know sometimes for those of you who are a little bit newer, the corners can be kind of funky. If you're more experienced, you can go at it and I'll meet up with you when you're ready to sew your crochet panel with your fabric panel. If you're a little bit newer, I'll meet back here with you in a little bit to talk about coming around that corner there. Okay, so I have finished my side here. Now, I should have mentioned too that there will be actually a little wee bit of a ripple because the density of the seedling stitch really shrinks in the stitches. The edge here is, I call it footloose and fancy free. So they are gonna sit a little bit looser. So they're gonna fan a bit, but the thing is that's okay because we are gonna stretch this a bit, right? It's gonna stretch over your pillow and with your fabric. So a little bit of give is okay. So I've come up to the corner here and so far I've done a total of 104 stitches. So I just placed the last stitch into the space here. Now at this point, if you end up having 100 stitches, it is not the end of the world. The main thing is how it looks and how it's going to sit once you put your pillow together. So how do we maneuver around the corner here? So I've placed a stitch already in this space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place one more. And then what I want to do is I want to chain two. And this is going to give me a little bit of a bend to help go around my corner. I will then go back into the same space and I will place 2 double crochets. Now you can gauge this as well. Some people might only need to place 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet. Some people might feel like they need 3, like a shell stitch, chain 2, and shell. So as always, just kind of place your work back and you can see it sits pretty smoothly. I don't need any more or any less. And then once I come around, I'm going to continue what I was doing previously by alternating front and regular post stitches. Now, the difference here is this is the top of the row, so you can actually do front and back post stitches because we actually have stitches to work into. So, since this is a front post, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a back post. And for this part, it should be very familiar to you. So that's a back post. I'm going to do a front post. You know the drill. Okay, just like that. See, so then it just continues on. So that's what we're going to do all the way across here. And then you know how to do a corner now, and then you're going to finish going down the other side. Once you get here to the end, you are going to slip stitch to join this round, but do not snip off your yarn because we actually do have one more row or one more round to finish off the panel. And I'll explain it to you in a little bit when I finish all 3 of my sides here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do here in the very last stitch because remember, these were single crochets and double crochets. So this double crochet is a little bit higher. So we can't do the corner like we've done the last 2 times. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right into that last stitch, or the first stitch of that row, I should say. Insert and just double crochet. I'm just going to push back those little tails there. And so that now that should stay nice and flush with that side, okay? So all we're going to do now is the absolute finishing round, and I like doing these types of rounds when I'm going to sew projects together. It just gives you a little bit of a nice straighter edge, and most especially because this project is going to be sewn to a piece of fabric, the straightness of the edge, we'll say, will really come out. So we want to make sure that it looks nice and crisp. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain one, and we're just going to rotate. So now we're going to work back along the bottom side of our work. Now we have stitches to work into, so we don't have to worry about trying to find our spot. And we are just simply going to slip stitch all the way around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into, just because we finished a double crochet, I'm going to just find a loop here, and just going to help it through just like that. And I'm just going to slip stitch. I'm just going to keep that first one nice and loose because that's in the corner. And then that's all I'm going to do into each stitch all the way around. So I'm just going to go into that stitch and slip stitch. I don't want to do it too tightly, but I just want to have a nice even set of slip stitches. Okay, really, really easy. Okay, so that slip stitch will give you a little bit more of a structure. It will probably crunch in your work a little bit. That's why you want to be careful. You don't want to be too tight, because we do have to allow some stretch to continue here, right? I may even recommend, if you're kind of a tight crocheter, go up a hook size. Like this is a 4.5, maybe go up to a 5 or a 5.5 when you do these slip stitches, because we don't want to do them tightly. So that's all you're going to do for the final round. When you get to your corner, you're just going to do a slip stitch, chain one, and slip stitch into the same spot. So just keep it nice and simple for your corners. And you're going to do all 4 sides. When you come to the end, you will fasten off and snip your yarn. And then if you have any ends whatsoever, that's the time when I would recommend you weave in your ends. All right, guys, this is the final round. And then we are going to put our pillow pieces together. Okay, so I have finished my square, I finished the edging, and so my panel looks like this. So if yours has a little bit of a ripple, I would not worry about it, because remember, this is going to stretch over your pillow. So the thing with the seedling stitch, or even the regular basket weave stitch, anytime you're working with front and back post stitches, it will tend to kind of shrink your work. But the good news is it's very, very stretchy. Look at that cool texture. Okay, so I have finished my one panel, and I'm going to move on to now pinning this to my fabric and sewing my pillow together. Now, if you opted for just creating both sides of your pillow with 2 panels, you may be going on to creating a second panel, or you might have your 2 panels ready. In which case, you're going to sew your 2 panels together. If you do that, make sure that you have the right sides facing in, so that you can then turn the pillow right side out and you have a nice clean seam on the edge. Remember to leave the 4th side open so that you can install a zipper. Now, for this project, I am doing an envelope closure with my fabric. So I'm just going to grab my fabric and show you what I've got here. So remember, for my fabric, I actually went to the thrift store and found a pillowcase, an old bed pillowcase. And I really like this one. I had a little bit of embroidery here on the end. So I had to do a couple of things. I sewed the edge that was the opening, because I wanted the embroidery to sit a little bit more on the bottom. So you can hand sew this, of course, if you do not know how to machine sew. So as always, these projects are very, beginner type friendly. So if you have a needle and a thread, you can hand sew this closed. So what I did with the pillow, I left the general length on one side, but then on the other side, I just cut one part off. So I know that my general pillow. So this pillow is 19 inches in width. And so I created 19 inches in height here, and then I cut off the rest there. So what will happen is this panel here, or this leftover bit of fabric, is going to be folded and then tucked in like an envelope closure. So that's why I thought this was a very, very easy type of project to do. So if you are handy with a sewing machine, just make sure that you sew down your edges once you cut them. If you're not handy with a sewing machine, you can hand sew this. You guys know that from my How I Hand Sew a Zipper tutorial. The technique is exactly the same. Okay, so I am just going to turn my pillowcase upward on the plain side. Because I want to really show off this embroidery, I'm going to do my crochet side on the opposite side. So if your pillowcase or your fabric was super plain, then you don't have to worry about that. You can do it on whichever side you prefer. So I've got my fabric there, and then I'm going to take my panel and place it on top here. Now, at first glance, you may be thinking, oh no, this is actually much smaller than my fabric, but remember that this has a lot of stretch to it. So that is why we're going to bring our pins out, and we're going to pin down our panel first before we take to sewing it. And by the way, if you're curious about this cute little pin cushion, I did crochet it, and I do have a tutorial on how I created this little mini pumpkin. And then of course I just sewed it onto a little cuff bracelet here. So I'll leave a link for it in the description box down below. Okay, so let's get to pinning our project. So what I'm going to do is I am going to make sure, I just have to weave that tail in. I'm going to make sure that I get all of my corners pinned down first. This will allow me to make sure that my panel is going to be stretched evenly before I start pinning down the way. So I'm just going to arm myself with my pin cushion here and take a pin. And I'm going to start with my very first corner. So what I want to do is make sure that it's sitting nice and flush, because I want this project to look really nice and clean and even. So I'm just going to place that on the corner there and pin it down. Now you want to be careful here, because there's usually a few bits of layers here on the corner because of all those seams, just like that. Okay, so just be careful you don't prick yourself. I had to do it on an angle there because I wanted to make sure that it caught the corner. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately go to the next corner, and I'm going to pin it right down to the corner here. And be careful, of course, not to prick yourself, as I just did right there. Okay, just like that. And then you're going to go to the next corner. Now, just be aware here and in the first two corners as well, but most especially here, you don't want to pin through both pieces of fabric, right? Because you want to be able to get your insert in. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm only getting this side of the fabric here. Just like that, okay? And then I'm going to go to the fourth corner, and you get the picture. Okay, so I have all four corners pinned, and you can see it's curling because when it's relaxed, this panel does seem shorter than the fabric. Don't panic. So now what we want to do is we want to go to the center of each side. So see how it's bowing out like that? So we want to just make sure that we stretch the crochet to meet up with the tautness of the fabric. So the fabric is going to be the leader here. So the fabric is sitting in nice and flush, and now I just want to pull this bit down here and this bit here. Okay, so I want it to be nice and even. I don't want my fabric to pucker. So I just make sure it's nice and smooth. It is going to be a little awkward. Sometimes I even use my elbow here There we go, to find a nice even spot. Okay, and then I just make sure that I pin that down there. Again, I don't want to go through both layers. So I just want to try and be aware I've only picked up one, and then I'll just double check that. Yep, only that side. Okay, so you can see it's sitting nice and even. And then I'm going to go to the next side and do the same thing. So we started on the outer corners, and now with each side you want to find the even center, all four sides, and then we're going to go back again and find the center of the center, which I'll show you in a moment. So again, I can see that the fabric is sitting nice and flush to the table. And this side has a little bit more crochet fabric to it, so it seems to be sitting a little easier. And just smooth it out and find my center right about there. And this one's going right into the seam there. There we go. So you're going to do that all the way around, pin along each of the centers. So go ahead and finish your other side, and then I'll just take you through the next step to pinning. Okay, so I've pinned the centers of all four sides, and now I'm just going to continue finding the centers of the centers. So what does that mean? So this is my insert edge. So now what I want to do is I want to pin down. I want to find the center point between these two pins. And this just helps things lay really nice and even. So this edge is okay because there's a little bit of extra crochet fabric here. So my center is going to be there. So that's the center point between these two pins. Just like that. And then I'll come over here and find the center point between this one, these two here. So I'm just going to make sure, always make sure the fabric is flat first, and then manipulate your crochet edge down, finding the center. So there is going to be ripples, but just make sure that they're evenly rippled. You don't want something like this. That's what you don't want, okay? Because at least the ripples will get flattened down in an even manner. So right there is my center. Just like that. Okay, so this is similar to what we did when we crocheted a zipper onto our crochet project. So now you're going to continue doing the same thing on all four sides. And then I would come back. You see, this is still too much of a gap for me. I would come back and pin the center of these centers. So that's what you want to keep doing until you can see that your crochet edge is sitting really nice and linear with the fabric edge. You want to do that on all four sides. And then you're going to be ready to hand sew your crochet piece to your fabric side. Now, I'm not going to take you through how I hand sew this. This is the exact same procedure we do when we hand sew a zipper. So if you'd like to have that as a reference, I'm going to leave that tutorial in the description box down below so you can reference it. I'll actually also put it in the cards up here so you can just click on it real quick. And we do the same thing. We pin it down, and then we hand sew our zipper, just like you're going to sew the panel. Like I said, if you know how to sew on a machine, go for it. I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning and finish sewing the side, and then I will take you guys through inserting the pillow, and we're almost there. Oh, just one more thing. I just wanted to mention this real quick. So you can use, so when it comes to sewing, you do want to make sure that you can match up the color of the thread to your project. Now I do have some blue thread here, but as you can see, neither of these two really match perfectly with this particular blue color I have. Like this one is too, a bit too dark, and this one is just not the right shade. See, this one has more of an aqua feel to it. This one has more of a faded kind of muted tone. So I am indeed going to use white thread, And I feel like it will be okay because we do have some white running through the project. And the way we slip stitched here, I feel like this white will get buried just deeply enough that you're not really going to notice it. So just in case you're wondering what color you should use, this is my method. As always, you want to do what's visually pleasing to you. So I'm going to go and finish pinning, hand sew, and I'll be back shortly. Okay guys, so I have sewn my panel to my fabric, or in this case, part of my pillow. And so I just want to show you the edge here so you can see that it's nice and flush. I got around all the edges, so if I just bring it in close, you can barely tell where the stitches are because it's on the inside of the fabric. So now on this side, you can still see that it's still rippling a little bit. Fabric is still just a little bit, it looks wider than the panel only because, remember, the panel kind of crunched in because of those stitches. But this is a-okay because we're going to insert the pillow and that's going to stretch everything out and it's going to make it look super smooth. So that's why you always want your pillow cover, you always want to make it smaller slightly than your pillow insert. And that way it's going to give you a nice firm pillow in general. So we're going to grab our pillow insert now, right here, and we are going to insert the pillow into our pillow cover. Okay, so this is a little tricky to get all on camera just because the pillow is so big. So basically you're just going to take your pillow cover and you're going to take your pillow. You're now going to work on inserting it into the cover. So you can already see that it's smoothing right out. Okay, so turn this over. This is the crochet side, so you just want to fix it up a little bit. So see, you're going to stretch it a bit, right? So you want to make sure that that side does come over the pillow. All right, so see how that's all smoothing out? Now, we've got this flap here, so this is the envelope closure, right? So this is where we're going to take that and tuck it right in. This is why in this design I left it the length of the actual bed pillow, because I knew it was going to help. The longer it is, the better it's going to help to kind of keep that closure in nice and solid. So you just take that panel and you just help it through, and then you smooth it out as you go and tweak your sides. You want to just make sure that there's no wrinkles because that will show. And here we go. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. So you've got that nice clean edge there. It's tucked in under the side. So here you have the side that has the embroidery, which looks so cute. And then you just simply turn it over and you've got your crocheted side there. So that is our seedling pillow. Isn't that so cute? So you've got the crochet on one side and you turn it over and you have the embroidery on the other. And there you have it. So I hope you guys found it fairly easy. Probably the trickiest part is just actually putting the insert in because, you know, you can continuously smooth it out forever and a day. I did make sure to press and iron this pillowcase before I sewed the crochet portion. And then once it was crocheted on, I also just lightly gave it a steam. Just be careful because this is acrylic, so you don't actually want to put your iron on it. And that just kind of gives it a nice little smooth look and texture. And you've got a beautiful pillow design. Now, the seedling stitch, if you have any questions about it, any further questions, because I know the front post double crochet and the back post double crochet back and forth, especially if you're a little newer. I know it can be a little awkward to get in front and behind, but if you have any detailed questions that maybe I didn't cover in the video, please feel free to leave them for me in the comment box down below. And as always, you know, you can email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com. And don't forget, visit me on the website, crochetcrafty.com. Lots of fantastic bonus tools for my crochet friends. Lots of sizing charts. There's some free written patterns as well as some additional written patterns on my Etsy shop, which is Crochet Crafty Canada. And remember, come say hi to me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at The Stitch Sessions. So guys, I hope you enjoy working on this project. Please do tag me. I'd love to see what colors you guys choose for your pillow. So have an amazing day as always. Happy crocheting. Take very good care of yourselves as always. And I will see you all in next week's session. Bye-bye.